When I was 14, I was asked to babysit my 3 younger cousins, aged 8, 4, and 1, in an extremely mountainous part of Pennsylvania. My aunt and uncle had a wedding to go to over an hour away and wouldn't be back until very late. Their house was situated on a steep mountainside. Their closest neighbors were about a half-mile away. Basically, it was in the middle of nowhere, and you would have to know where you're going to get there. You don't just accidentally end up there. My aunt and uncle left us with some pizza and their cell phone number next to their landline. This was the early 2000s and I didn't have a cell phone, but even if I did, I wouldn't get reception there anyway. The baby was already asleep. The 4-year-old wasn't feeling well and was quietly watching TV in the living room as he dozed off. The 8-year-old was playing Guitar Hero with me up on the loft. The loft overlooked the living room, where I could keep an eye out on the 4-year-old, and there was a huge window that overlooked the driveway. The road that led to their house ran straight into their forked driveway. It was a dead-end road. The house was as far as you could go. It was about 10 p.m., pitch black outside. No moon to illuminate the area. My cousin and I were still playing Guitar Hero when headlights caught the corner of my eye. And not my aunt's minivan headlights. Huge truck headlights with those roof lights you often see on Jeeps or other off-road trucks. Not only that, but the truck was also going down the side of the house, which was completely abnormal. That's where the kids' play area is. This was not my aunt and uncle. This was not anyone they knew. Panic and dread filled my body. I was a small teenage girl, alone in an isolated house on a mountain at night with 3 children in my care. In a terrified voice, I asked my cousin, "Who is that? Jake, do you know whose truck that is?" And then he looked panicked. "No, I've never seen that truck before," he replied. I quickly ushered him downstairs, still unsure what to do, but the 2 little ones were sleeping down there, and I wanted to make sure they were safe. I checked on the baby and then grabbed the phone to call 911. Then I started to hear the metal garage door being shaken violently. No one ever opened the garage door. More panic fills me. I hear them try the door beside it, the doorknob jiggling. My uncle usually hangs down there, but no one was actually knocking, so it's not like they were trying to see if my uncle was there. Plus, the lights were out. It was dark in there. They knew no one was there. They were definitely trying to break in. The door leading to the basement steps was right next to the phone, so I could clearly hear all of this going on. I quickly turned the little lock on the doorknob just in case they did make it into the basement. My heart was practically jumping out of my chest. I'm talking to the 911 dispatcher as my 8-year-old cousin clings to my arm. The operator is trying to calm me down, but I knew it would be at least 30 minutes until a police officer could get up there, assuming they didn't get totally lost around here. I just kept thinking, we are fucked. We are dead. This is how I die. The operator asked for the number my aunt and uncle left me so she could have another dispatcher call them to let them know the situation. I turned around to grab the paper with the number on it, and to my absolute horror, I see a man peering in the large sliding glass door. A huge, burly man with long, scraggly red hair and a big red bushy beard. And what made it worse, he was grinning at me, grinning in a way that still scares me to this day. Meanwhile, I had to have looked like a terrified deer in the headlights. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. There was a second man behind him I couldn't see as well. I have no idea what he looked like, but he was equally as tall and a bit lankier than the larger man at the sliding glass door. I screamed, "Oh my God, they're here!" And before the 911 operator can say anything, my 8-year-old cousin goes, "Mr. Jim?" His voice was very confused. It wasn't like my cousin was happy or even relieved to see him. I asked, "You know who that is?" But before my cousin can answer, I turned my attention to the man in the door. "I'm on the phone with the police," I shouted. I'm grateful he didn't try that door because I don't even think it was locked. The man stared at me for a moment, eyebrows furrowed, as if he were deciding what he wanted to do next, but he then just backed away into the darkness. What seemed like an eternity later, I saw the truck lights back out of the driveway and then back down the road until they disappeared. I was still scared shitless, and so was my cousin. He had only met that guy a few times, an acquaintance of his dad. It wasn't like it was a close family friend, and obviously, because again, he was parked where no one else usually does. The 911 operator asked for a description of the man, and then told me they'd gotten in touch with my aunt and uncle and they were on their way home. She stayed on the phone with me until a police officer showed up a bit later to make sure the men were gone, and they stayed with us until my aunt and uncle got home so they could ask them some questions. My uncle was furious, not at me for calling them home early, but at this Mr. Jim guy. He muttered something like, "I'm gonna fuck him up." My aunt was mad at my uncle and told him to tell Jim to never come back again. I didn't know at the time, but my uncle had a drug problem. I don't know what Mr. Jim or his accomplice were doing, or what they would have done if I wasn't on the phone with the police, but that grin was not a friendly one. It was sinister. And again, he intended to break into the basement. That much is clear to me. There's no other explanation. I never did babysit for them again, and I don't think I ever even went back up there because not long after, my aunt divorced my uncle and moved out. Hey, it's Ramona. These next two stories were shared by the same person. They lay out some foundation in the beginning, which will be relevant to both experiences. Also, if you are enjoying the channel so far, make sure to leave a like and subscribe as it helps me out a ton. Thank you, and back to the video. Dog days. When I was 16, I would nanny for two boys, Brandon, 8, and Randy, 15. Randy had mental health problems because he was born with liquid in his brain or something. Either way, he was a sweetheart, but you could tell he had some trouble walking and moving his hands. They had a dog, Gunner, that was a yellow lab and Akita mix. This dog was huge and protective. I watched the kids every other week, all day, Monday through Friday. Gunner watched everything I did the first week. I had to gain this dog's trust. That first week, the dog made me uneasy because if I was with the kids and they'd start being loud and rambunctious, he would get between me and the boys and start growling, even if I wasn't playing with them and just happened to be near them. Gunner learned to trust me rather quickly though. There were 2 times that Gunner saved our lives. Story 1. The boys lived in a rough neighborhood. Not scary, just rough around the edges. We went for a walk to the playground a couple of blocks away and a white van slows by us. There were a bunch of guys yelling at us from the window, saying inappropriate things to me and calling Randy horrible names about his condition. "Just ignore them, guys," I said in a hushed voice as I shifted and put myself and Gunner between the kids. Gunner didn't take his eyes off of them in the van. The tension rose the fur on his back straight up. As the men kept yelling at us, I pulled my phone out and started dialing 911, but it didn't hit send before Brandon started yelling back, defending his brother. Then everything happened so fast. The back door to the van opened and 2 men jumped out. "Run." I remember screaming at the boys just as Gunner ripped himself free from my grip on his leash. Everyone started running but me. The boys sprinted home, the dog sprinted towards the van, and I frantically tried dialing 911. Gunner chased the men back in the van, nearly grabbing the leg of one man, and they sped off. Gunner received a lot of treats and praises when we got back home. Story 2. This one really freaks me out. I was allowed to have friends stop by since I practically lived there, and the boys liked hanging out with my wholesome friends. Gunner would never bite anyone unless actually attacked, just so you know. One day, a man came to the door, knocked, and said he had something to drop off for the boy's mom, who was supposedly expecting it. We could see through the window that he seemed like a gentleman and was very nice, but as I approached the door, Gunner cut me off. He started barking at the door insanely. Gunner prevented me from being able to reach the doorknob. He was gentle with me, but forceful. I yelled back to the guy to leave whatever it was on the porch, but he seemed insistent, saying things like, "Can you really not just unlock the door for a minute? Come on, Randy knows me." But I had to tell him I physically couldn't get past the door so I could call the mom for him. The man got weird and was like, "No, that's not necessary. I'll come back another time," and rushed off. The guy had some distinct features, and when I described him to the mom later, she informed me that she had no idea who he was and that she wasn't expecting anything. We never found out who he was, and he never came back. So, thank you, Gunnar.